I found it quite easy to fake being a Christian for quite some length of time. It was easy enough to camouflage and sneak right in, acting like one even though I didn't understand it, never mind truly believing it. But if I could just pass for one, just by following the prescribed formula, then how could Christian experience possibly be genuine? I used to think that. I look back on those days with some shame and regret because I have since experienced God's grace and mercy, even to one who once sought to fake it and coast along without any real effort, mostly entirely apathetic. That agnostic phase did, however, give me sympathy for those who want to believe, yet find no unshakable proof of the supernatural. I remember wanting to have some undeniable life-altering experience of some sort so that I could have a reason to believe, to have a reason to maybe start taking it seriously. It was essentially like I was making a wager with God. Do this for me first, and then I'll believe you. You need eyes to see and ears to hear, Jesus said to those who doubted him. It takes the mystery of faith, always, to believe, for God has no apparent interest in compelling someone to believe all of the time. You don't always get the proof you want just because you demanded it. Because the skeptics see rumors of another world as just that, just rumors, not proofs, there's a thin sheet of belief separating the natural from the supernatural. Along with many Christians, I have undergone 2 conversions. First from the natural world to discover the supernatural, and later to rediscover the natural from a new viewpoint. A sovereign God who superintends a universe of 100 billion galaxies and yet lavishes intimate attention on its tiny creatures on this one tiny ball floating through space. How do I comprehend such a God? At times, I have railed against the mysteries and sometimes I accept them. As a starting point, I take for granted that a creature's proper response to God is humility. Accepting this may require that I, like Job, bow before a master plan that often may make no apparent sense. In the face of doubt, I have learned the simple response of considering the alternatives. If there's no creator, what then? I would have to view the world with all its suffering as well as all its beauty as a random product of a meaningless universe, the briefest flare of a match in cosmic darkness. Perhaps the very sense that something is wrong is itself a rumor of transcendence, an inbuilt longing for a healed planet on which God's will is done on earth as it is in heaven. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth before the days of trouble come, warned the teacher of Ecclesiastes during the midst of foreboding over old age and death. His book chronicles a methodical search for an alternative, a life apart from a creator. In the end, he found that both hedonism and despair lead to an infuriating sense of meaninglessness. Astonishingly, the creator seldom imposes himself on his creatures. It requires attention and effort on our part because the creator slips quietly backstage. God does not force his presence on us. When lesser gods attract us, God withdraws, honoring our fatal freedom to ignore him. I've noticed that our lives always form some sort of pattern whether or not we consciously arrange it. For instance, I know many people whose lives center on material possessions or on things that are ever so fleeting. They worry about money, houses, cars, they boast about their work, they spend hours each day keeping fit and making themselves beautiful. They live for weekend partying, they worry about relationships, whether they have one or don't have one, they worry about reputation, popularity, being well known and well liked. I think these life patterns grow out of natural desires and longings. Our bodies desire things like food, drink, stimulation, pleasure. At another level, we also long for beauty, love, security, worth, meaning, belonging. Everyone has such longings, and how we respond to them depend largely on what we believe about why we're here. If I were to see myself As one more species of animal with no life beyond this one and no accountability to a higher power, then why not follow the pleasure instinct to the end? On the other hand, if I see this planet as God's world and my longings as a desire for another world, then I want to connect those clues to God's overall plan. I want to bring the two worlds together, and I do so by accepting that we human beings must look beyond ourselves for direction in ordering our desires. On the other hand, if I see this planet as God's world and my longings as a desire for another world, then I want to connect those clues to God's overall plan. I want to bring the two worlds together, and I do so by accepting that we human beings must look beyond ourselves for direction in ordering our desires. These are all of these things that my generation is desperately seeking after. Beauty, love, security, worth, meaning, and belonging. The common trend today is the notion of a self-love sort of mindset to try to fulfill these feelings. It's difficult because our friends like that are trying to grapple with some sense of goodness and morality without having an actual unchanging moral compass. Self-love, this regard with one's own well-being and happiness, these are just their attempts to try to find some kind of meaning and significance apart from God. These things sound really good, but at the end of the day, they're not going to fulfill you. It's all a secular attempt to find confidence and satisfaction and identity and worth and value apart from religion, apart from Christ, and we know, as it has for thousands of years, it comes up short. Why don't you look to the person who loves you and cares for you unconditionally, something that you can't do on your own? The reason why self-love doesn't work ultimately is because there are some days when we really don't love ourselves and can't love ourselves. So what do we do when we fail at loving ourselves and we look in the mirror and we don't see anything good? If you can't look to the person who created you, who tells you who you are, then how are you going to be able to find any self-worth? Right? It's just a reminder that all of our attempts to find satisfaction on our own always come up short. Where else, in all honesty, can we get an explanation for our existence, find clarity for our confusion about who we are, find grace for our guilt, and meaning for our morality? Can you find those things without God?